Welcome live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. You are watching the Week in Review. Of course, it's the program where we review some of the big stories to come out of the week and, of course, what has been making headlines and getting South Africans talking. I'm Liesl Wilson. As always, let's take a look at some of those headlines before we get into some of the top stories for today. Well, the family of Swedish tourist Annie Devani has criticised South Africa's justice system after the Correctional Services Department granted Zola Tongo parole. Other news, the NICD says another 6 deaths have been recorded in South Africa in the latest 24 to 48-hour reporting period. On the sporting front, Bangladesh and their victory drought in South Africa with a 38-run win in the first one-day international. All right, those were a look at your headlines. Let's get into some of the top stories making headlines this week. We start off, we've seen the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NEHAWU, has shut down the University of South Africa. It follows a wage dispute that has since led to a full-blown strike at the University of South Africa. On Monday, graduation ceremony was disrupted and future planned ceremony scheduled for this week had also to be postponed. But as for the latest, we are now joined by UNISA spokesperson Victor Dlamini. Victor, a very good afternoon to you and thank you for joining us here on the SABC today.
Thank you, Lizzo.
Perhaps a point of correction or contestation, a shutdown of a university that obviously works with correspondence, perhaps needs to be reworded in that sense. But to get context as to what has happened to date, can you walk us through the origins of the strike and where you sit on the negotiation table as we speak?
Well, I think it's clear that because UNISA is an online and distance education institute, it's difficult to use correctly the word shutdown. So there definitely has been disruption. What happened was that on Tuesday, when we held the first of our graduation ceremonies, UNISA employees who are allied to NEHAWU, they were also at the venue, which is the ZK Matthews Hall. And I think what South Africans were seeing was really a culmination of a disagreement about two main issues. The first one being salary adjustments, the second one being overtime pay for security staff on Sundays. There may well be a basket of other issues, but those are the main issues. So they decided to disrupt. And I think the university very correctly decided that it wouldn't be wise to carry on with other with the other ceremonies that had been scheduled for the graduation week. And so these were postponed. In the meantime, conversations have been taking place between management and the leaders of NEHAWU at UNISA. And it's hoped that a breakthrough can be made so that both the graduation ceremonies can go ahead as well as the normal activities of the university.
All right, so you've spoken about the two main issues of contention and perhaps the negotiation process that is underway. And I wonder to date then, what has the impact on service delivery been, perhaps in study material, assignments and assessments for those students who obviously are enrolled? And how have you managed to mitigate against some of those effects that's been presented with the onset of the strike?
So one of the most visible ways in which there was an effect was the release of results, which had been scheduled for the 18th of March. These have been pushed to the 24th of March. And I think the university has really taken a view that says that it's quite likely that the dispute will be settled very shortly. So our sense is that at most, if you are looking at anything that's affected, it's going to be affected by no more than a week. And the students that have been affected have already been given extensions, either on the coursework that they have to do, or in the case of the results, they've just been pushed by 6 days.
Okay, so with that extension granted, I think the obvious question was perhaps how this is going to impact the rest of the academic year. But you're saying as this negotiation process unfolds, it seems that there is a resolution on the table come the next week or so. Perhaps we could look at the issue of the graduation then and the university's plans that have been put in place to rectify the disruption of the graduation. I mean, we understand that people come from far and wide to attend the graduation. How's that been factored in as well?
Well, I mean, I think this is really a sore point for all of us who are involved in the university, because sure enough, the NEHAW members have got grievances which can be addressed, but it's deplorable that they chose to disrupt a ceremony that is important both to the students as well as their families. And I imagine some of the NEHAW members themselves have had their own family graduating. So, the sensible thing was obviously to postpone, and it is hoped that once this is resolved, there will be no more disruptions. So the university's management has expressed its deep regret that there was this disruption, but has confirmed that alternative plans are being made. And once these have been made, they will be communicated, obviously, both to the students directly who were affected, but to the wider university community as well.
All right, Victor, perhaps just for clarity's sake as we end this conversation, it's reported that NEHAW's protest stems from claims that the institution failed to honour the wage agreement that was signed in January this year. Perhaps also, as you alluded to, two main issues. And I wonder, in terms of what the union is calling for, what demands have been put in place, and how are you going to address this going forward?
So, on the issue of salary adjustments, the two parties just have to find each other. And once an agreement is made and honored, I think the university will return to normalcy.
Okay, Victor, let's leave that conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we did reach out to NEHAW, but they were not available. This is a developing story. Perhaps as more details about the negotiation process unfolds, we continue to have that discussion. But Victor Dlamini, spokesperson of UNISA, again joining us for a quick update on the negotiation process at UNISA, where we heard earlier this week NEHAW workers striking at the University of South Africa following a wage dispute that has led to a full-blown strike at UNISA. Right, let's take a quick ad break. We continue with more news and updates on the other side. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Week in Review with myself, Liesl Wilson. More news making headlines this week. There's been mixed reactions to President Cyril Ramaphosa's intention to suspend Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mqwebane. Well, here is how the Public Protector and political parties reacted.
We look forward to the speedy finalization of this inquiry, given the crucial role that the Public Protector plays in fighting corruption and maladministration in the country.
The economic freedom fighters reject Cyril Ramaphosa's premature and dictatorial attempt to suspend the Public Protector. This is another move where he is misusing his prerogative to sideline and destroy an African woman.
Now, with the Speaker indicating that Parliament will continue with the impeachment process, the question that arises, why is the President in a hurry to want to suspend the Public Protector? Why not allow this process to be completed?
There were many court cases which actually found the Public Protector incompetent and not fit for the position, and therefore this process must be completed so that the public in the end will regain trust in the office of the Public Protector.
As the ATM, we are of the view that President Ramaphosa is highly conflicted on the matter, and his actions can only be seen as a self-serving action for self-preservation interest. As a person, or as the person he wants to remove, is the very same person who is investigating him on serious ethical questions that have been raised about him.
President Cyril Ramaphosa must not waste time to suspend the public protector, Busisiwe Mgwebane, from that office. It is long overdue. We are saying that she must be fired immediately by Parliament because she is not fit to hold such a esteemed office.
The public protector received a letter from the president confirming the news reports and informing her that he is considering suspending her in terms of section 194 subsection 3A of the Constitution. The letter further invites the public protector to, within 10 working days, provide reasons why the president should not take such a step. Although the president's letter makes reference to the correspondence from the speaker and purports to attach it, no such letter was actually attached, suggesting a rushed process.
Right on the back of that, South African Federation of Trade Unions SAFTU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi has assured workers that attempts to collapse the Labour Federation will not succeed. SAFTU and its affiliates have come together in a show of solidarity with Vavi after rejecting the notice of intent to suspend him. Vavi has also rejected efforts to place him on precautionary suspension for alleged breach of the Labour Federation's policies. When a letter to SAFTU office bearers and executive committee, he says, according to the Federation's constitution, only the National Executive Committee has the powers to suspend national office bearers. Vavi says he will not allow anyone to stop him from serving the workers. In other news, political analyst Levi Ndau described the departure of Mbali Ntuli from the Democratic Alliance as a huge blow for the party. Ntuli announced her departure from the DA this week, saying she wanted to explore other avenues. The party in KwaZulu-Natal says Ntuli's resignation is not surprising because she did hint that she intended to leave. All right, so these are some of the stories making headlines this week. For more on this and other top stories, we are now joined by political analyst Professor Sipho Siepe. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Thank you for joining us here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Prof, it seems like it's been an illustrious week on the political front once again, and we obviously have, contextualized some of the stories we're focusing on. I want to quickly start off with Public Protector Busisiwe Mgwebane, who is facing an impeachment, obviously following the resumption of the National Assembly Section 194 Committee's inquiry to impeach her. Now, with less than 10 days to convince the president not to suspend her, I wonder if we can discuss, the issues at hand, particularly the issue of accountability of the public protector to the National Assembly at large. The president taking the cautious stance of allowing her to also give her input. But as we see this process being drawn out for quite some time now, I mean, it is also about maintaining the credibility of the institution at large. Given her predecessor, what comes to mind for you as you analyze what's transpired this week alone?
Well, first of all, the public protector is on record to say she is not opposed to the issue of accountability. So she understands that accountability may mean that people will look at fitness to hold office. And what she has asked for is that when that process is undertaken, it must be a fair process. And that was the first thing. Now, what we have here, we have two processes. One process from government, from the parliament, which has already started. And the question that has been presented to the president is whether it's time for him to suspend while the process of looking into a fitness, while there is a debate in parliament about that issue. So this is where the parties seem to part, because you have on one end that the person who's supposed to suspend is himself conflicted, because the public protector was investigating the president. We must also remember that there is a high court judgment that said the former president could not appoint a judge because he was conflicted. So the issue here that people are looking at is, can somebody who is conflicted and with the benefit of the high court that says the former president, because of him being convicted, he should not be given the right to do what is constitutionally made possible. So that is the issue that is being raised. And others are saying, why hurry? Why not wait for the process? But the president has actually done something to say he's going to set a process. And his process is that the public protector must provide reasons why he should not be suspended. So the ball is now in the public protector's court to be able to make that persuasion. And then in doing so, the public protector can as well raise these other issues that I'm raising, that also political parties are raising in terms of am I getting a fair hearing? Is the process itself above board? Because the issue of accountability must also mean that the process itself should not be called into question.
So, Prof, as the non-renewable term for the public protector, also comes to an end, and we're looking at the timing of all of this, I wonder, going forward then, based on this, intent to suspend the public protector, what do these dynamics then look like for the institution? Will she then have to stay and serve? Will there be an acting public protector placed upon her suspension? And as we look at her, her tenure to date, her interpretation of legal matters, legal capacity, particularly as we juxtapose it to her predecessor and what's come forth in terms of upholding the credibility of the institution. What's also transpiring on that front? Is it playing for or against as we speak?
Yeah, well, there's a particular misrepresentation of what has happened. When the public protector, the new one, Mkhwebane, took over, she took over at the time when the court had said the findings of the public protector are binding. Before then, there was lack of clarity. So the notion of litigation only started getting into gear once she took office. It does not mean that the previous public protector was not found wanting. There are a number of findings and the remedial actions that were overturned by the courts. But what we have now is that because of that decision, the Nkandla decision, that the remedial actions of the public protector are now binding legally, what people are now doing is to go to court. But the issue that she may have also had in terms of both fact and interpretation of law is neither here nor there, because judges themselves have been founding a number of times. You have this is why we have an appeal process. The appeal process is based on the understanding that the judges themselves can get it wrong, including judges of the Constitutional Court. We know that the Constitutional Court itself does not find itself in agreement all the time. There have been instances where you have 2 against 9, you have 5 against 4, meaning that when it comes to interpretation, we're not dealing with an exact science. So if all people who were found wanting, or judges who were found wanting, were to be removed, one will talk about consistency. But here you have somebody whose judgments can be reviewed by a high court, by a Supreme Court of Appeal, and also by the Constitutional Court. Yet people are saying they're paying for her blood. But judges who are routinely found wanting, we don't seem to show the same energy to say, how can you be a judge and be found wanting a number of times, including the Constitutional Court? Actually, one of the professors in the States, he says even some of the judgments that comes from the Constitutional Court are embarrassing. We also know that even the so-called incarceration of Jacob Zuma was also found to be wanting by some people, to say this is a detention without trial, which goes against the Constitution. And even their fellow members of the Constitutional Court said that their colleagues are acting in a manner that is unlawful and unconstitutional. So the issue of that one can err from time to time cannot be the only basis why you want to remove somebody. And you must also understand that the people who sponsored this motion, they did not want her in the first place. The DA was not happy with the appointment. But having said that, there's nothing that says, whatever process you may have gone through, whatever controversies, that they should not be held to account. So what she says when you do it in such a way that the process is beyond dispute, that also it is considered to be reasonable and fair.
Prof, moving on to other matters, staying with legal matters though, we heard lobby group Advocates for Transformation, AFT, obviously later advocate Dali Mpofu's replacement by Kameshni Pillay and Sibokazi Poswale Ratodi, who's going to be the representatives at the Judicial Service Commission. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this turn of events. Obviously, given the Chief Justice interviews and some of the criticisms that also arose there, I mean, we also understand that the next round of interviews for the JSC will be happening on the 4th of April. What is your stance on this turn of events?
Well, first of all, the JSC process is not totally legal. It's also political. So you'll expect that there will be political burps and that will come from the process itself. But as far as Dali Mpofu, the advocate Dali Mpofu is concerned, his term of office had come to an end. So whether he being replaced will bring a different texture and posture by people representing Advocate for Transformation, it's something that we still have to look at. But what is most important is that our system is not broken, that none of us is not replaceable. So we are going forward with that process. But what people had raised is that the questions that were raised to the people who were aspirant for the position of Chief Justice, some of them were considered to be unfair, and some of them said that they were taken off guard. So what will be important is that as we move forward, there must be lessons that should be derived from the previous process in terms of what are the expectations for the JSC, and what are the expectations that should come from also the people who want to become judges. But what we should not do, we must not allow a situation where judges are treated with kid gloves, because when they stand there and they wear those robes, their judgments are very serious and sometimes they can disintegrate individuals and their families and their communities. So we should also be as rigorous in the process of seeking people who are going to lord over what we call justice in this country. We cannot have people who are going to be treated with kid gloves and then they have so much power, the power to disturb and to disrupt people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely, Prof. Quickly, another story that obviously made the rounds this week. Balintuli resigning from the DA, her resignation follows some of the other prominent figures, notably Lindiwe Mazibuko, Musima Imane, who left the party in recent years as well. I mean, she cited unhappiness, some claims of cult-like behavior, but I think the question is, what is the impact on South African politics, perhaps also the party, given her constituencies in KZN?
Well, she had played a major role in popularizing the DA among African people. And her departure will not be seen outside the broader context of many other leaders who were seen to be draw cards for the DA, who also left. And after some time, they started speaking out to say why they leave, that they do not think that the party, the DA that they joined, is the party that will serve the interests of South Africans and also of African people. So her departure will be a blow, even though at the moment what we're getting is a sense of an amicable separation. And what she says is that she's not giving up on politics, but she has decided to say there is a way in which she can serve South Africans, and being in a political party limits her ability to deploy her skills, her understanding and her experience to the benefit of South Africans.
Prof, this conversation concludes by looking at the extension of the national disaster to the 15th of April. I mean, we also heard the DA is set, while they filed the urgent court bid against the irrational extension of the state of disaster. And what are your views in reaction to this calls, I mean, to end lockdown? We've seen the impact of the economy on tourism, perhaps also, whilst it was used to salvage and save lives, but we're looking at the fight against the spread of COVID-19. And perhaps, just some of the way decisions were made. We're looking at the powers of the National Coronavirus Command Council versus Cabinet, etc. And, some questionings about the democratic processes and practices rather unfolding there. What precedence has been set upon this new announcement?
Well, we should actually say we should be pleased that this matter is being taken to court, because what the government would do is to be able to make a case for itself, because there have been accusations even by very people who are senior and judges who have actually said the manner in which the government dealt with the issue of a state of disaster is actually undermining the people's democratic rights. The fact that the DA has taken this matter to court, it will make its own argument, both in terms of whether that is impactful, whether it's actually working. Because if you see the people's behavior at the moment, you also see that they behave as if that the state of disaster is not enforced. So when something becomes unenforceable, it makes no sense for you to continue to do that. But what government has also said is that they are extending it for other reasons other than the original ones, to make sure that the social provision and support is legislated or it finds itself in regulations. So what we should be looking for is really this engagement in court, where government will be able to respond to concerns that have been raised, but also the DA's own argument to say this is a move towards dictatorship.
Professor Sipho Siepe, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for the analysis. Again, for our political analyst, Professor Sipho Siepe, analysing some of the top stories that transpired on the political front here on the Week in Review. And on that note, we are going to leave it there. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. From myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the Week in Review team, it is goodbye. Tomorrow we'll be back for a look at the week ahead. Do take care.